Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back once again to the Crew First Culture Podcast. This is Jeremy again, and I am very excited today. I got not only a guest, but a guest that is a very, very good friend, close friend to me, even though we've not known each other very long. But today I've got my friend Marc Maikoski with me. How are you doing, Marc?
I'm doing phenomenal.
Awesome. So I asked you to spell it for me before we started because I always get it wrong, but you are a captain at Alpharetta Fire Department in Georgia. Is that right? Did I get it right?
Yeah, that's correct. Alpharetta
Gotcha.
is about 25 minutes north of Atlanta, just a smaller, uh, probably a little bit more affluent suburb, but we still run our fair share of fire calls. So,
Perfect. So Marc is another in my, I guess my tribe. I've talked about it quite a bit on here in episodes that have just been me talking about things of my life. The guys with the TRT, the Tactical Resiliency Training, that's where I first met him, and he has definitely become a good friend, good brother. And I'm really excited to let him share a little bit about his story, a little bit about his life, whatever we get into. So thank you for joining me. This is Marc's first podcast, he said. So gonna introduce him to the world of podcasting and see where that goes. But I'm excited.
as am I. Thanks so much for having me, Jeremy. It's a true honor. I'm probably one of your biggest fans. I listen to every episode that you share, and I love the raw content and just kind of your reflections as you're driving to work and sharing where your mind's at on your way in. So it really is a true honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. And that's, we talked a little bit yesterday just to kind of give a little maybe behind the scenes to anybody listening. And you expressed some concerns about you just, it's almost like I've shared lately, almost like, who am I to be, in this type of situation. But what I shared with you is something that I think is worth telling everybody else. And I've had lots of guests on and really enjoyed those conversations. And some of them have been people that I've had some close bonds and ties to, and that has been really enjoyable. But there's also been some people that I didn't know and I didn't have that connection with. And it was more of a sterile conversation, just surface stuff. And I don't get anything out of that anymore. I don't get fed by that. And I don't feel like there's a lot to that for anybody else. And so for me, I feel like the purpose of this podcast is really heading towards getting into some real conversation and some vulnerable, transparent conversations with people that have great value, and especially people that maybe haven't had the chance to share that. And so that's honestly why I really wanted to get with you and get you on here. So that being said, just kind of, I honestly, I don't think I've ever really done this as far as this format, but if you don't mind, just kind of give us a little insight onto maybe childhood, early kid, things like that. Just a little bit about where you came from.
All right. Well, that's a very good place to start because I'm a true believer in that who we are is a sum of all of our experiences and in our journey along the way. So that's kind of who makes it what makes us who we are. So I was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan,
Yeah.
early 70s. So my parents were not to get too far back, but my parents met, they were in the marching band together, and that's where they met. So my mom was a 70s hippie and my dad was a Marine in Okinawa. So typical 70s story
Yeah.
that goes. And they met up and eventually got married. And I'm second oldest of 10 kids. So I'm from a
Wow.
big family. And that to me is probably one of the things that has shaped me most as far as being able to adapt and overcome and connect with lot of different personalities and people who they are, and not be judgmental in their beliefs, but just love at a visceral level. So that's kind of where I was. I was kind of a shy kid. I wasn't that kid that grew up wanting to be a firefighter. I didn't look at fire trucks. It wasn't one of those things that was really on my radar as a kid. I loved being out, playing, riding my bikes, building ramps, jumping the bikes off the ramps, riding bikes through mud puddles,
Being a boy.
being a boy. Had very driven parents. Both of my parents were teachers, so it's kind of in the blood. I've got two daughters that are adult children now that are both have teaching degrees as well. So I guess teaching's in the blood. And I just had a pretty cool little childhood growing up. I came across a lot of good friends. Once again, being from a big family and being able to adapt and overcome, I had a lot of different friend groups. It's not like I just hung out with one group. It's not like
Yeah.
I played sports in high school. I played football. I wrestled. I did all that other kind of stuff, but my passion was weightlifting and that kind of stuff. So it's not like I just hung out with the jocks or the punks or the emo kids or whatever. It's like I had different friend groups, and just depending on where I was that day was where I was. So
Yeah. So you said 10 kids. So brothers, sisters, how does that
I've
play
got
out?
7 sisters and
Good grief.
yeah, 2 brothers. So I'm well versed in the world of females and how to deal with them. The toilet seat stayed down in my house.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I bet I understand the whole, being a part of the big family definitely kind of gears your mind to being open to different viewpoints and different, all of that. It's funny because our youngest daughter just kind of had a conversation with me about that just a week or so ago with our family. We've got 8 kids total. It's a blended family, so those get big really quick, easily. But that's what she was saying is honestly, I guess what she was saying is that's why she's so tough, is she grew up with so many boys, and it's definitely made her a little bit different personalities than most of the girly girls that she hangs out with. So that's funny. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
so like you said, it makes the world bigger. We probably
Yeah.
had more stray people in our house growing up than we had stray pets, with all the friends and hanging
Yeah.
out. Everybody
Yeah.
called my mom, and it was just a real family loving type environment. So everybody was accepted and everybody was welcomed. We probably really embraced the island of the misfit toys concept. So
Did you live in Kalamazoo basically your entire childhood, or?
I graduated from high school, and then when I turned 19, took my first time getting on a plane, my first flight, out to Utah, and was there for a couple weeks, and then flew to South America, and I did a 2-year missionary service in South America in Chile. And that was once again another one of those transformative moments for me that helped, number one, love the aspect of serving my fellow man and woman, and just losing myself in the service of others.
So kind of, I guess, tell me what led to that. Is that something that you were interested in previous to that for a while, or is it something that just kind of fell in your lap, or how did that come about?
It's something that our church does. So I grew up a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and commonly known as the Mormons. So the guys with the white shirts and the black name tags and all that other kind of stuff. And I was Boy Scout. I got my Eagle Scout when I was 13. Well, probably my mom got my Eagle Scout when I was 13, but we want to give true credit where it's due. And then it just came time to serve, and it was a very, very pivotal time in my life when, typically around that age of 19, 20, that's kind of the party years for a lot of people. And that was a time that I was able to choose to go and serve. it's not that I picked to serve in South America. I was kind of assigned there, and went to Chile and found my second home. Really connected with the people there, the Chilean people, and I've got some very, very close friends that I consider family. It got kind of like an adopted Chilean. So
Yeah, that's great. So I mean, obviously, just you describing it definitely made an impact in your life. What are some things that you could throw out that come to mind really top of your head of what made a difference and during that trip for you?
I think the biggest thing, like I said, I grew up was born and raised in Kalamazoo, so my world was very, very small.
Yeah,
So to get to experience the world and see that there's bigger things out there than just what we have, just our own perspectives. There's a whole nother world out there. My expectations and perceptions of what I was going to go into to South America were blown out of the water the first day. I mean, it was, I was expecting some third world country, and it wasn't that. It was,
yeah,
they had comforts of living and all that other kind of stuff. And I'm hearing radio music. I remember hearing Queen or something in one of the houses next door and they were trying to sing along with it, but it was just kind of cool. It was like, regardless of where I am, we're still connected in some way or another.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
and then just to be able to have, for those 2 years, to focus on, I mean, we didn't watch TV, we didn't have phones, we didn't do this. It was purely focused on serving our fellow man, and to be able to dedicate to turn off the outside noise and just truly focus on service and following the not to get too religious, but the life of Christ and kind of what he did. He's our perfect example. So if we can do a small part of what he has shown us, we're doing right. So
I think you're describing a lesson right there that if we all haven't learned it yet, we definitely need to. Just in the fact of you've got that picture in your mind of what it's like somewhere else, or what it's like to be somebody else, and until you are there, or until you meet and get to know whoever we're judging, you just have no idea. And I I know I haven't had an experience probably like that, as eye-opening as you have, but I definitely have had experiences like that to where I've almost had to check myself for my attitude towards something like that, and just say, you have no idea what's going on. You have no idea what they're facing, or what they come from. And so I think that right there is a great lesson in itself, just to understand the perspective of, looking at people or places that you don't really know, what's going on.
yeah, definitely. So to me, the power of presence is the most powerful thing that we can do. It's called the present because it's a gift. And a lot of times I think we can connect with just about everybody out there if we find those common beliefs. We all have at least one thing in common. And if we can find that one thing in common and build on that, that really creates almost an instantaneous connection with that person, because it's something that you both believe in, that you both feel, and you can build your relationship off of that commonality.
Did you find that it just having different backgrounds, different cultural aspects about your life and the lives that they were living, was that at first, or maybe continuous, was that a struggle to overcome, or did that come fairly easy
I
to
think
make the connection, I guess,
yeah, I
between each
think the
other?
language barrier was kind of a hindrance, but it was also kind of a blessing as well, because you didn't have the words and you couldn't really communicate. So you had
Yeah,
to communicate on a different level other than using words and talking. Probably after about 3 or 4 months, I could understand Spanish pretty good. And then after about 6, 8 months, I was able to be pretty fluent, and I'm kind of a chameleon. So if I go hang out in the backwoods of Tennessee for a month, I'm gonna come back talking like I've been in the backwoods of Tennessee. So I'm kind of a chameleon. I adjust to my surroundings, and that was kind of a blessing. I mean, especially it's a cool tool to have running calls, to be able to show up on the scene of somebody whose native language is Spanish, and to kind of listen, because I don't necessarily look the look, but to be able
Oh
to
yeah.
listen to what's going on around in the Spanish language,
Yeah.
unfiltered and raw. And then if it's a serious thing, I can start speaking Spanish, and then their eyes get like super big, like, oh crap, what did we say? And all this other kind of stuff. But that's the immediate reaction. But immediately the secondary reaction is they feel comfortable because I am talking their language. I'm
Yeah.
speaking to them. It's something that they are comfortable. So it
They're
helps.
being heard. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So
Yeah. That's great. That's something that I've always, it's just one of those things where I want so badly to be fluent in Spanish, but I just haven't put the effort and the time into it. And I'm sure there's lots of people out there, but I do agree that there are lots of moments where it would have definitely been helpful on scene for sure. So that's pretty cool to be able to not only learn some life lessons but to bring skills back that you are still using today. So you are 19, 20, 21-ish at the end of this. So where did that kind of leave you when you were done with that stint?
so I returned from South America, and then went out to school, to college in Idaho. At the time, it was called Rick's College. It was a private university. Saw an EMT class and kind of signed up for it. Thought this might be something cool. Took the EMT class and thought, yeah, I can do something like this. This is right up my alley. And then pretty quickly after that, they had a pretty in-depth paramedic program at the time. And that's where I think my love of teaching started, because as you progress through that paramedic program, you become a lab assistant to help teach the students the year or two behind you. So you're actually helping teach labs and teaching them skills and all that other kind of stuff. And I think that's kind of where my love for instructing and being in front of a classroom and sharing my own personal experiences with others kind of developed. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was out in Idaho. And that's actually where I met my wife. We're next week, almost a week and a half. It'll be our 28th wedding anniversary. So my
That's
first and only wife. So I'm kind of an anomaly in
Yeah.
the first responder realm. Has not been all rainbows and unicorns by no stretch of the imagination. It's definitely been a work in progress. So, and then she was from the Atlanta area. She was from Georgia. And our paramedic program, we did internships. So my first internship I did at Grady Hospital in downtown Atlanta. And that was kind of my first baptism by fire, so to speak, into the world of EMS. And
So is that something that just once you got to that point, you just knew this is something I'm interested in. This is something that I'm here to do. I mean, or was it something that it kind of like, oh crap, what did I get myself into?
actually it was something that I felt like it's my calling in life. Who the Lord calls, the Lord qualifies. So I was once again at that human connectivity level. It wasn't the medicine side of things. It was just being there for people at their being there for them on their worst days, and to be able to there and support them. I think some of my most precious times in the back of the ambulance aren't the times that I've been able to give medications or help somebody medically, but just after all the work's done, holding their hand on the way to the hospital and just hearing their journey and what they're going through and kind of connecting with them.
So during this time, I guess you're just like in basically a rental situation or something. You're still kind of out on your own, but not really.
At this time, around the internship time, that's about the time when my wife and I got married. So
Okay.
her family was in the Atlanta area, so we stayed with her folks for about 6 months. We had a 2 or 3 month old baby at the time, so it wasn't ideal necessarily living in a room. I wasn't only doing my internship ride along hours, but I was also working as an EMT on the ambulance. So I was putting in a lot of time, a lot of hours. So
Yeah. So how long did you work just strictly EMS before you kind of got the idea to start looking at fire jobs?
I was on the ambulance for 2 or 3 years and just kind of realized that private ambulance service, there wasn't a whole lot of stability there. Um, just seeing how things were up in this neck of the woods. After 8 or 10 years, the logos on the trucks change and the patches on the sleeve change, but it's the same people. So I was able to connect with one of the fire departments, which is the one I work for now, and thought there's some really cool people there. The department at the time was transitioning from a very smaller volunteer type department with probably one full-timer per shift. Then they had part-timers, and they were starting to really start their full-time workforce at that time. So it was a real beneficial time to get on with them and to kind of help the department grow. And that's where I've been ever since. One department.
Yep, that's kind of similar with myself. I've only applied at one place. I've only been at one place, so I definitely can identify with that. You said earlier you 2 daughters, so is that 2 kids total still?
No, I've actually got four. So my
Okay.
two oldest are married. My fourth grandchild is due to be born in the next anytime now. She's due in 3 or 4 weeks. So that'll be our fourth grandchild. Then my son lives at home with us. He's high functioning autistic. So he drives, he's got a car, he's got a job and everything, but he's still kind of learning the life skills. So he still lives at home with us, and we're just kind of helping him along and learn, and hopefully some point he can kind of get out on his own. And then my youngest just graduated high school. So I've got 3 daughters and a son.
Gotcha. And so kind of going back to that early time, you mentioned that you were living with the in-laws, you've got a new baby, a new wife, you've got several jobs, it sounds like. Is that is that a time in your life that sounds as kind of just churning waters constantly as it sounds, or was that a fun time?
It was probably a fun time. Well, it depends on the perspective. Once again, for me, it was a fun time. I don't know how it was for my wife, but it was one of those, having just typical young married couple with a kid and one car and trying to get to work and everything that entailed. I'm kind of I'm a stay busy person sometimes, and that's kind of to kind of foreshadow. That's kind of the thing that that's been my most transformative thing in my life, has been to change that, not having to be busy all the time. So once shortly after I got my first full-time job at the fire department, I also got a part-time job at a neighboring department. So I was working 48s for the better part of 15 years as well.
Good
So
grief.
working a lot of hours so my wife could stay home and help raise the family. And we always had that viewpoint that we don't want somebody else raising our kids. So we both probably suffered, her sanity and my relationship with my kids due to that. But we were very fortunate that she was able to raise our kids all the way through elementary school before she had to she wanted to start working. So
Yeah, no, that's been the struggle with myself. I feel like every single day, there's so many things that I want to do. There's so many things I need to do. There's so many things that I feel like I'm being pushed or called to do. And it's just trying to find not only the time, but the energy and the focus to figure out what I can get done. It's a struggle for me as well. So I'm sure what you're talking about as far as, trying to figure out that transformation that's needed, it's probably something that I need to do myself for sure. you've been in the fire service now for 28 years, you said. How would you describe that career? Has it been a career? So for me, just to throw it out there, 21 years for me, it's been constant roller coaster ride for me. There are some really good highs, and there's some really bad lows, and there's everything in between. And so that being said, is that I would assume that's what most people would say. Is that kind of how you would describe yours as well?
Yeah, definitely. So, got some really good connections with the people that first kind of started training me, and those connections. I've worked with a lot of different organizations, nonprofits, um, all this other kind of stuff, different departments. And even though I move on from working with those organizations or those departments or people, I look at those situations, those opportunities, those were the catalysts that brought us together, but they're not necessarily what defines our relationships. So those were the things that kind of helped us connect.
Yeah.
We don't need those to continue on.
Yeah.
I talked a little bit about like the religious side of things and what I did. Once again, a firefighter is part of who I am, but it doesn't define who I am. My religion is part of who I am, but it doesn't define who I am. Just because I prescribe to a certain group doesn't mean that defines who I am. It's definitely part of who I am, but it doesn't define me at all. And that's the biggest thing that I think people struggle with in the fire service, is that the fire service becomes their identity.
Yeah.
So they have a hard time adapting to the world outside the uniform.
Yeah. And that's actually a piece of, I would just taught a class in Missouri last weekend, and that's kind of a piece of that class is talking about don't put your identity into things that can be taken away. And that's what is happening right there is yeah, fire service is pretty stable, but there's injuries, there's layoffs, there's lots of retirements, there's lots of ways that one day you can be a firefighter and the next day you're not. And if you invest your entire identity in that's who you are, that's encompasses your life. If it's taken away, then what are you? Who are you? And so I think that's a very dangerous thing for us to do. And it's not just about, identifying as a firefighter. It's anything that can be taken away. It's very dangerous, because when and if that happens, you're left with a huge hole, and you're really left with not knowing who you are. And so finding things that truly, like you said, they aren't, you can't take it away. This is who I am. I don't care if I lose everything else, it's still who I am. But I think that's very important for us to reflect on and figure that out. I kind of describe it as I'm a firefighter. I love being a firefighter. I love the fire service. I can't imagine doing anything else. But honestly, it's not my purpose. My purpose was not to be a firefighter. Being a firefighter and being in the fire service is really just a vehicle that has helped me get to my purpose and reach and fulfill my purpose, because it's allowed me, basically to be sitting right here. And so that's kind of how I describe it. Is that kind of, do you feel similar ties to that?
Oh yeah, most definitely. The fire service definitely has changed in the 24 years that I've been with my department, and I've definitely changed. You have to change. So for a firefighter to say that the fire service isn't going to change them is like saying, I'm going to walk through the shower and I'm not going to get wet.
Yeah.
It's not an option. It changes who we are. We are some of our experiences. So there's been great, phenomenal times in the fire service, in my fire service career, and there's been some pretty crappy times. The bond that we form with our brothers and sisters in the fire service is second to none. I mean, they become our families. And I've witnessed some of my brothers and sisters go through some pretty trying times, and me personally, I've gone through them as well. Luckily, I haven't had to deal with some of the things they have. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't have any addictions or anything like that. As far as substances, we've all got our addictions, be it what they are. So regardless if you drink a lot of alcohol or you play a lot of video games, that becomes an addiction, that kind of stuff. So at times I become a little bit remorseful on what the fire service has taken from me as a person. For the longest time, it took away my emotions. I didn't want to feel birthdays, holidays, everything else. That was just another day to me. So I watched my family enjoying the holidays or Christmas or birthdays, and I'm just sitting over there in the corner like, okay, it's another day. What needs to be done? Type of thing. And that's one of the greatest gifts that I've gained back here lately after doing all the work I've done personally, is being able to feel again. And instead of seeing the world in black and white, seeing the world in technicolor and appreciating the small things, kind of like what we talked about earlier. It's, if we don't do the small things, we're never going to be able to do the big things.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is obviously we're headed to right kind of where I'm really excited to dig into. You know, when we're talking about some transformation stuff, you're talking about kind of regaining some feeling, or the ability to feel. You're talking about finding the power of presence and figuring out that staying busy all the time isn't. You're talking about a lot of things that were obviously big steps in your life, and so just kind of let us in on where things were at the time of before these transformations started happening, and what led you into searching for solutions for that.
Once again, the staying busy portion of it, a lot of my coping mechanisms, when it came to the stressors of the department or my job or calls I ran, the way I dealt with them I taught CrossFit. I was a CrossFit instructor for 7 years. So I would spend a lot of time in the gym. I'd teach a 5 a.m. class to 6 a.m. class. And then next class wouldn't be till 9:30. Well, I would spend that from 7 till 9:30, hitting the weights and pounding myself into a pile of tears and goo and sweat in the corner just to get that energy out. And then I'd wait around to the noon class, and I would do the same thing in between classes. So I was doing 3 or 4 hours of working out for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And I did that for a long time, and I connected. I loved that period in my life to be able to take somebody coming off the street that's not necessarily an athlete and coach them to be a better person. And to see their personalities and to go, some people needed the coach that was the football coach yelling and screaming at them, come on, do this, you got to do this now, versus the person that's kind of calmly supporting and lifting somebody else up that may be struggling in what they're doing, and to see the light in their eyes when the light bulb goes off, like, I can do this, I got this, or to get their first box jump or their first pull up or something like that. It was just amazing to see those small victories in their life in the gym, because then it would translate to their life outside of the gym. Well, I did that for a pretty long time, and through that, I was really big on the health and wellness side of firefighters, setting the standard for being healthy physically, mentally, and financially. So I reached out at the time, the Florida Firefighter Safety Health Collaborative, a very valuable resource and valuable organization, was kind of just getting off the ground, and they were doing some pretty cool stuff. So I connected with Chris Bader, who's the kind of the founder of that organization, and just on the physical side of things, to look for SOPs and SOGs for like physical fitness requirements for the department, that kind of stuff. And that very quickly morphed into the mental health side of things. And I saw that, hey, they're doing this mental health thing. They're doing some pretty cool stuff. I mean, they were teaching this class called the Clinician Awareness Program, where they actually took therapists and clinicians, mental health professionals. They taught them the fire service culture so they could understand what we are as firefighters and what we do, our schedules, our vernacular, the terminologies we use, our shift schedules, all this other kind of stuff. And then we actually put them in turnout gear and put them in a cold smoke environment and let them experience being in gear, doing physical tasks, all this other kind of stuff, in hopes that we can create a culturally competent clinician out there. So when we're in there talking to them, we're not having to spend the first 4 to 6 sessions explaining what we do as firefighters and why I can't meet with you every Wednesday, or why I can't talk with my wife on this, that, the other, and stuff like, all right, my wife calls me with an issue at the house and I'm trying to deal with it. And then the tones go off. I'll call you back, honey. And then 3 calls later, I still haven't called her back and it's 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And how those kind of issues can reflect on our relationships at home as well. It was a very, very phenomenal program, and they're still teaching that. I've since kind of moved on to other things, but that was a once again, another very pivotal point in my life where I was able to not only share the skill set of what I can do with others, but also to connect with some of the best human beings that I've ever met. People like Dustin Hawkins and Jeff Orange and some of the giants down there where it comes to mental health, and the things they're doing down there in Florida is second to none with what they're trying to do to support the fire service and our mental health.
So when you start, your interest starts getting piqued with this mental health aspect of the fire service and with life, is it just an interest with you, or is there something that you feel like, okay, this is something I need, that kind of fueled that interest? Or was it just strictly something that you found interesting?
I think personally, deep down, I knew it was something that could help me out, but being second oldest to 10, I've kind of got that big brother mentality. So if it gave me a chance to help other people and take care of other people and protect them and look out for them, that's kind of like my big brother mantra as growing up. So I was able to kind of reach out and see that my presence could sometimes in our own organization. I'm trying to think of a politically correct way of saying this. Being in a smaller organization, it's Mark talking about mental health stuff again. So it's just me, it's just the same tone. It's like, well, it's just Mark talking about mental health stuff again. And at some point, people are almost get tired of hearing it. So to be able to go outside of my organization and be able to connect and see that my influence is actually really far and wide, and I can actually help others and have a captivated audience. That's kind of what was driving me on that aspect. So
Yeah, no, that's awesome that you bring that up, because that's what I feel inside too. That's what drives me to do the things that I am doing and trying to do more of, because if I was just doing it, for traveling or for money or whatever, I wouldn't enjoy it. It'd be fun for a little bit, but to truly be doing these things because it is who now I believe is a part of the purpose that I'm here for, man, that makes it completely different. I want to speak and reach as many people as I can, because not because of who I am or because of anything that I feel I am doing or done, but because I've been given a message, I've been given a purpose, and that's what I need to do with it. It's almost like this is what I have to do because this is why I'm here type thing. Is that kind of another way that you would describe that?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of times in the organizations that we work for, it's just like at home. You don't see your kids growing every day.
Yeah.
You don't notice how much they're growing. And then somebody you haven't seen for 2 years are like, holy cow, your kids are growing. You're like, no, they haven't. They're the same. But because we've just those small, and I think it's the same in the departments we work in. People get their perceptions of us from the time that we're rookies or we come on the job, and they get those preconceived notions. So if you work at somebody at a station early on in your career and you don't work at the same station with them 15, 20 years down the road, they still see you as that rookie at that point at that time. So their perception of you is purely based on that interaction 10, 15 years ago, and doesn't necessarily reflect on that person who you are now and the things that you're doing, and the things that you've learned, the things that you've been involved in.
Yeah. So you're, like we said earlier in the introduction, you're a captain, you're a station officer. How has that been? How long have you been a captain, I guess, first in that role?
Going on 17, 18 years as a captain.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what would you describe that journey as far as, since you've got quite a bit of experience in that role?
I've kind of been really, really fortunate where my driver at the station, he's been with me probably the majority of his career. He came on 6 or 7 years after me, and we kind of got him as a firefighter, and we've been able to mold him. He is, if you look in the dictionary underneath driver engineer, he is the picture that is in the dictionary for driver engineer. He's very well versed. He's a mentor as well. He teaches the hydraulics classes, the calculations, the engineer stuff. His dad was a battalion chief in New York type stuff, so he's got it in his blood. And his last name is Blood, by the way. But it's been really fortunate to grow as an officer as he's grown as a firefighter and a driver and all that other kind of stuff, where we're very connected. We're on scenes, we don't have to speak to each other. We already just know. So I've been very fortunate. We have 6 stations in the city, and I've been assigned to 5 of the 6 of them. So throughout my career, and I've been at the big dual house, the busy houses. Right now I'm at a slower house, but even though our call volume isn't there, we tend to stay pretty busy anyways, doing other stuff or testing out different hose bundles or doing this or doing that, the other. My firefighter, he's been with us probably 4 or 5 months, and he brings in a wealth of knowledge. He was a city of Miami firefighter. So to get the knowledge from somewhere else that he brings with him, and he's the way I look at it is I wear a red helmet because somebody has to be in charge when things happen. Other than that, everybody brings their expertise and their knowledge, and we can all learn and grow together. It's I don't necessarily, I'm not the one that walks around with stickers and belt buckles and all that other kind of stuff on my truck and that kind of thing. Once again, it's part of who I am, but doesn't define who I am.
Yeah.
That being
No,
said,
go ahead.
when my firefighters, when his kids would come by the station, they'd run up and say, "Hey, Cap," and give me a hug. And now that's what my grandkids call me, as Cap, because I just love the way it comes out of the little. That's their term of endearment for me, as Cap.
I think I've heard you say that before, and I remember it because I think that's one of the coolest things I've ever heard. Having grandkids that call you Cap, that's pretty amazing. Especially, you said that you've got your 4th on the way. Well, we just had our first back in the end of March, and that's been pretty awesome. Pretty awesome to start that chapter of your life and to be able to play that role now. That's a pretty neat thing. So it's a pretty funny story.
And that's one thing that has brought a lot of those emotions and feeling back, is seeing those grandbabies.
Just hearing that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. So something else that I wanted to kind of touch on too is you talked about you and your driver with that relationship and that time together, not hardly talking when you get on scene. That's something else that we discuss as a crew and really strive for with training. And I love the fact that if you put that work in ahead of time, and you got your riding assignments and things going on put in place, that's the way it should be. It's not that it's just a bunch of cowboys running around doing random crap. We are all doing our own individual tasks, but we're all working towards a common goal. Right. And we don't have to talk to accomplish that, unless something out of the ordinary comes up. But that's a great, it's almost like a great measuring stick that I like to use to just kind of from the outside looking in with other crews, how they handle themselves and how they work as a team on scene. It's very apparent when you have crews that are working like that put a lot more work into themselves and into the job and all that, as opposed to the crews that they're basically, it's the mother may I, you know, they're told a certain task, they do that and they stop, wait for the next task to be told, and you know, and so that's something that I've kind of found interesting to use to look around and just kind of see people watch and crew watch for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Those they're connections and bonds that you can't form without necessarily doing the work. I mean, if you want to help morale in any department, have a string of structure fires back to back, because that's what
Yeah,
we sign up for.
absolutely.
That's what we do. And you look at everybody after a fire, and yeah, somebody, it's unfortunate somebody just lost their life, their house, whatever like that. But for us to actually go out there and perform on our Super Bowl and be able to do stuff, everybody's got a smile on their face, sweaty, smiling, kind of hugging each other, because we all stepped up when it was time to step up and do our job. So, and that's one of with our department, we don't have a lot of fires. So I think that's where a lot of the morale issues and that kind of stuff come from. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That is something that I've kind of had to just be okay with. You know, I don't wish that on anybody. No, none of us wishes that on anybody, but it is why we are here. It is our job. That is the reason that we exist as a career and as a profession. So yeah, I mean, it's okay to be excited that you did a good job. And so that's something that I've kind of had to understand and be okay with. But yeah, there is no comparison when you get that, you know, that call, that fire, and especially the ones you know you did a good job on, to bring the crew together, that there is no comparison. And something I've struggled with, and just kind of want to see if you have had similar thoughts and similar struggles, is we tend to fall in some slow, cold stretches ourselves at my department. And sometimes it gets very frustrating that you put so much work into training, so much, you know, you're doing all of these things to become better at fighting fire and everything else that's required on scene. But then you go for a long stretch without anything, and it gets a little bit kind of defeating after a while. Have you ever struggled with that, or face something similar to that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm that guy that shows up for work, gets to the station an hour and a half before shift, and kind of gets my mind right and able to work out. So there was a long time there I was putting in a lot of work and doing a lot of training, almost kind of detrimentally. Um, Once again, it's fun to have the fires. I've got the crew that gets on the truck, and we like to beat people into their first due and be that crew and that kind of stuff. So they know when a fire bangs out, we're coming. So you better get on your horse and go. And it kind of helps kind of elevate the performance of everybody else when that happens. That being said, it's probably been 2.5, 3 years since I've been on an interior attack. In that 2.5, 3 years, I'm a paramedic as well. And I've had much more impact. I've never had a grab in a fire, but I've been very fortunate to have quite a few cardiac arrest saves due to the work of my crew. I mean, it's in the Lord's hands. We all know that, but if we're trained and we're ready to perform and we're ready to do what we've been trained to do, we can be a tool in his hands. And probably one of our most recent ones was my friend Nicole. And I say she's my friend because we've hung out and I met their family and her kids, which is the coolest thing in the world to me. She was working out at the gym, Orange Theory Fitness, bent over, went into cardiac arrest. The trainers at the gym shocked her and everything. And then we arrived and we shocked her and brought her back. And 2 weeks later, she's home with her family. And to be able to meet her kids and that kind of stuff. And now she's a huge proponent for CPR. She works with American Heart. She goes around, shares her journey and her story. And just to see things like that happen, where I feel fortunate to have been there. I'm no believer in circumstances. Things happen for a reason.
Yeah.
And to be able to connect with patients and show the human side of things. I think also often we show up, we run the call, and then we move on to the next one.
Yeah.
In my organization, we're very community oriented. So I've been very fortunate to connect with quite a few patients and to just kind of see them, how their lives progress after our interactions and how they're still around to see the next child born or to see their daughter get married. That's what it's all about. That's really what it's all about. And that's kind of what I use as a motivation. I think all too often as firefighters, we're all about the adrenaline, go after things, but we can impact people just by showing that kid the fire truck in the parking lot.
Yeah.
So it's in my mindset now, it's appreciating the small things, the little things. My thing right now, I sit on the front pad and I watch the sun come up and listen to the birds before the tones go off in the morning. And that just kind of gets my mind right to realize there's a bigger world around me. And it's not just what's going on in the station, just what's going on in the department, just what's going on in the fire service.
Yeah, that's great. You know, that leads right back to kind of what you talked about, the power of presence. And I think that's what I want to get into right now, is just kind of the realization of that playing out in your life. What brought that transition, that transformation for you, the realizing the power of presence and what it took to get to where you are now from where you were?
I think mentally, I just got to a place, somebody that's really well versed in peer support and really well recognized, told me something. He said, you can never rob somebody of their rock bottom. So if we never allow somebody to get to their lowest, we're always going to enable them before they hit there. A lot of times we hear the saying, God's never going to push us or give us something that we can't handle. And I disagree with that. I think God puts us in situations that we can't handle so those around us can help us out of those areas. So there are things that we cannot handle by ourselves. I 100% believe in that. And that provides opportunities for those around us to kind of serve and lift us up. So if we are dealing with a friend, a family member, or whatever, that is constantly, if they didn't have bad luck, they wouldn't have no luck at all. When bad things happen, if we bail them out every time, they're never going to learn how to do it themselves. Doesn't mean that we have to desert them, but we hear it all the time. If you're struggling, reach out. And it's up for us to be aware of what's going on around us. That if we see somebody struggling, or if their name is impressed upon our heart or on our minds, that we need to reach out to them. We need to pay attention to what's going on around us. It's not for them to reach out, it's for us to reach in.
I think I'm sitting here writing this down before I forget it, because I'm terrible memory wise. Man, I love all of that you just said. You know, that visualization of that quote, you know, you can never rob someone of their rock bottom. Just thinking back in my life of, you know, the people that I've tried to help, and it went nowhere over and over and over again, because they weren't ready. They weren't ready to receive that help and to make changes. I literally just had a conversation with my daughter yesterday about kind of that same thing. Is, you know, I can't do these things for you. You have to be ready to put the effort in, or to do what is necessary to make those changes, or else we're all wasting our time and everything else. But I think the coolest thing is what you were putting together, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I totally agree with you now, but maybe the better way to say it is, God doesn't give us anything that we can't handle alone.
Yes, that's what yeah, definitely.
I think that's pretty powerful. And I honestly don't think I've ever put that together, but I totally agree with that. And I think that right there kind of encompasses the power of the tribe that we're a part of. You know, and the connections that I have grown and gained just even this year is that I have been through some stuff this year that in the past has probably would have really been a struggle for me in every way to overcome. But with the people that I have in my life now, they were hard, absolutely, and they did zap me of a lot of energy and a lot of just mental and emotional strength. But I never felt like I was hopeless. I never felt like I was in anything that I couldn't get out of. And so it was almost like the people around me gave me the strength that I wouldn't have had on my own. So totally agree with that. God, he's not going to give you anything that you can't handle alone. That's a big word right there. What do you think?
No, I 100% agree, and that's kind of where I was going with that. I kind of got to some pretty low times, struggling with things at home, just my relationship with my wife, us not understanding each other. Once again, kind of going our own directions. It used to be like when I was working a bunch or helping teach classes, I would put it on the calendar or I'd check with her first. Hey, do you have this going on? Do that. Well, now we're to the point where I just kind of do my thing and she does her thing. So, it's not that we're coexisting, it's just life is busy and our kids are grown now, so we don't have to be as coordinated with our schedules. But there was a time when our marriage was suffering, and it was struggling, and I think it was more of a communication thing. I think also too often as first responders, we kind of protect our family. I would come home after shift and I'd be down. We'd run a bad call or we'd been up all night or whatever. And I'd come home and maybe give her a kiss when I walk through the door and then just kind of disappear and de-stress and do my thing without even letting her know why I am the way I am. And it comes to the point where she thinks it's something that she's doing or something
Yeah.
she's doing wrong. It's back when our kids were younger. I would work 48s. My one day off, I'd come home and I'd clean the house and I'd upset her schedule. So she was like, I don't like it when you're home because we've got a schedule with the kids and you come in and you upset the apple cart. I would be frustrated because I'd come home and she'd be busy with the kids. So I'd try to help by cleaning up the house and doing that. And then her perspective was, well, I'm not a good wife because I can't keep the house clean. So my husband comes home, cleans the house. Well, I'd go back on shift for 48 hours, come back, the house is a mess again. So my whole existence at home was just trying to clean up the mess at home when it was doing total opposite of what I thought I was doing. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
I
and
think
go ahead.
I think transparency is a big thing. So we don't share a lot of times with our family members or our spouses kind of the calls we run. They don't need to know the nitty gritty. We can give them the Disney version versus the HBO version. But if they understand that we ran a bad call and that got to be kind of our communication thing is she'd be like, bad shift or busy shift. And then she would know kind of where my mindset was.
Yeah. That's very important, I think, for everybody to kind of find that vocabulary that speaks to both of, especially if you have a spouse that isn't in any kind of medical field at all. They don't really understand that. You talked about the clinician thing, to where they're getting to know firefighters and that culture and all that. I think it's similar with our spouses. If they aren't familiar with the roles and the responsibilities and the things that we deal with, then it's not fair to expect them to know, and it's not fair to expect them to be able to provide the support or whatever it is that we need, because they just don't understand that. And if we're not putting in a little bit of work to maybe clear some of that up, it's definitely something that we need to take responsibility for sure.
Yeah, and that's kind of like where her understanding came here recently. we decided we've done things together like 5Ks, 10Ks. We did a half marathon together. My wife and I, and we did 75 hard together. Andrew Frisella's program, 75 hard, where you do 5 or 6 tasks a day for 75 days straight. And if you don't do one of those tasks, you have to start over at day 1. And one of those things was read 10 pages in a book. And she got some firefighter book or whatever. I don't know why she picked it, but she read it, and that was her 10 pages of reading a day. And she actually read in there him talking about how a call affected him. And he went kind of in depth on the call. And she said, have you been on calls like this, seeing this kind of stuff? Now, we've been married 26, 27 years when she's asking me this.
Yeah.
So you can tell where I dropped the ball.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. She said, you've never even talked about it. I was like, no, you don't need to know that kind of stuff. She said, yeah, I kind of do, because if you're having a hard call or you having a rough patch, I need to be there to help you and support you. And it was really eye-opening to me. And then coincidentally, she's a bus driver. So I was on shift. I get a phone call from her and she's in tears. Well, as she was dropping the kids off, she went around this car 2 or 3 times in her route. And then somebody flagged her down and said, there's somebody in that car. And some guy had passed away in the car. And she called me. She said, I saw my first dead body. How do I get over it?
Yeah.
Then she had a level of understanding of sometimes the hard calls we have to get over and what we have to do to cope. And I just kind of told her, all right, you just have to, in your mind, say, all right, what did I do next? What did I do next? What did I do next? If it's put the bus in park, put the bus in drive, I made a right turn, I did that, that kind of gets our mind progressing past those events, and we can kind of move on, take that first step out of that trying time. So
Yeah, that's something that, man, it's so easy to really it's not even forgetting. It's just not even having an ounce of space in our mind that what we deal with is so far from the norm that normal people don't ever see. And the things like that, if you were telling me that was you, and we're both firefighters, obviously spend a lot of time on a job, it wouldn't be that big of a story. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just this is what happened, and then we were moving on to the next thing. But you could tell, just you telling that story, it was a truly impactful moment of her life. And I'm sure that was probably eye-opening for you as well, to see how that, if you're viewing you in that driver's seat, how you would have thought about it, but to see her reaction to it was probably pretty eye-opening.
Right. And those are the conversations we have to have. A lot of times we're fixers, first responders, firefighters, we're fixers. So if we're having a discussion of something a family member or spouse is going through, it's good to start that conversation with, do you want me to fix it or do you want me to feel it? Because a lot of times they're just venting. They're preventing the levy. The pop-off valve is blowing off right now, and they just want to share. They don't want us to fix or provide solutions. They just want us to feel what they were saying.
Yeah, for sure. That's a very good, almost like an opening question, just to figure out where to start, is that right there. So as I mentioned in the introduction, where I met you was in North Florida, Fire Expo with Rick George and the TRT group, with your instructing, where you were instructing the developing high performance class. So just talk to me a little bit about kind of how that that relationship came about. How were you brought into the TRT?
Happy little accidents.
Yeah.
We had a time in our department, so we had this thing called the doghouse drill. So it was kind of a tunnel, your typical SCBA, darked out, everything, going in and doing things. So we were having some people that were having some mass confidence issues. so I'd heard of Rick George and kind of the premise of what he teaches and the mental resiliency and that kind of stuff. So I reached out to him kind of as the health and wellness, unofficial health and wellness person to see if we could get him to come in. So he came in for 3 days consecutive and talked to every shift, kind of the concepts that he teaches in this class. And Rick and I kind of connected there, and our paths crossed a couple times at FDIC one year and that kind of stuff. And one of our captains at the time was struggling with some substance use issues, and Rick kind of connected with him and got him into Shatterproof down there in Florida, the treatment center down there. And through that, we kind of talked back and forth. Well, this person made it through Shatterproof, the treatment program, and is really not just surviving right now. He's thriving. He's back working as a firefighter, that kind of stuff. Well, Rick was going to teach a class at MAFC, and this guy was going to help Rick teach the class. So he's like, hey, how about you come join us? So I reached out to Rick. I said, hey, I'll come down, do grunt work. Just, I want to experience what you're doing. Well, sure enough, something happened in this guy's life and he wasn't able to attend. And Rick was like, well, tag, you're it.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
And very quickly, just the class being what it is, we call it the left rein and right rein between Rick and Dave, the two guys that are heading up the course, because Dave is very organized or whatever, and Rick's kind of more emotionally driven, so to speak. And so I was that first class, I was just trying to figure things out, probably kind of like you were in this last MAFC class. And very rapidly developed a phenomenal relationship with guys like Tuna and Eddie Del Campo. I don't know if you met Eddie yet.
Not physically. I've talked to him quite a bit over the phone, but I haven't shook his hand yet.
Yeah, and guys like that, and just to experience their journeys and connecting at a very visceral level. I mean, you spend 24 hours with somebody that you just met, and you know that they've walked a similar journey as yours. There's an immediate understanding there, kind of like where your struggles are and who to reach out and somebody to understand. So I think we do peer support naturally in the fire service. I don't think it necessarily needs to be formal all the time. And quite frankly, my tribe grew by 8 or 10 guys that day, and I was able to connect. That's kind of where I met and connected with Eric and got really involved with the yoga for first responders stuff. And that has been one of the main things that has changed my mindset and my awareness here as of late. So taught the class in MAFC. Next class was in North Florida. Took a little bit more of a teacher role and was able to actually instruct portions of it. And then this last one at MAFC, I finally feel a little bit grounded that I really embrace what is going on in what we're sharing. So
yeah, it's funny that life works how life does. And I say that, in other words, it's funny seeing how God's path leads in the directions that God's path leads us in, because the happy little accidents comment that you said, that's obviously, I've talked several times about my beginnings with this group, and it's the same way. Just happened to be lucky enough to take advantage of a little opportunity that turned into another one and another one and another one and another one. But to so quickly be just connected, and I don't even feel like connected is powerful enough of a term with that I feel with you and the other guys in that group. But it's amazing to see. Just I think it's vulnerability, it's transparency, which you've kind of talked about. These they're just real people, and they're amazing people, because no, they're not perfect. They're not the cookie cutter, perfect life, whatever people. They've dealt with some stuff, just like I've dealt with some stuff. They've been through struggles. They've been through some huge setbacks. They, a lot of times are still going through things like that as I am. But to feel that feeling so quickly, it truly is hard for me to explain. And gosh, I really enjoy everything that I've gotten from just that experience of meeting everybody. And it sounds like that's kind of a similar kind of feeling that you had as well.
Yeah, definitely. Just the level of connectivity and the brotherhood that happens there is really second to none. And I think you said it. I listened to your last podcast before this one, and just talking about the vulnerability piece. As a company officer, as a leader, I think that's one of the most valuable things we can have as a leader. There was a time my son, he was 14, 15 years old, going through some struggles and having a lot of mental health issues, suicidal ideations, couple attempts, like wrapping an extension cord around his neck, that kind of stuff that I was going through at that time. Well, there just happened to be a shift where this was like within the space of a week of each other. We ran a call, a 13-year-old kid hung himself in his parents' closet. And all I could see was the face of my son on that kid. And I came home that next morning. I told my wife, I said, I'm not going to be good for, I don't know how long. It might be a couple weeks, but we ran a bad call and I'm having trouble struggling with that. And sure enough, at my full-time job, once again, we get dispatched to a 14-year-old possible suicide. And on the way to the call, I told my guys, I was like, look, we're going to handle this call. We're going to do what we need to do, but I may need some time afterwards because this hits too close to home. And just to let them know, even on the way to the call, like, hey, this call may screw me up, that I'm not Superman, and these things affect me. So it's okay if they affect you.
Yeah. No,
And
I
that's what we
think,
find with this group that we're working with. That's everyone's got those experiences.
yeah, that's a mindset that I don't see as much now. Maybe it's kind of working itself out through, the changes in generations, but that whole mentality of, well, you're a leader now. You're somebody high up in the chain now. You've got to portray yourself as somebody that, doesn't have struggles or problems. You just deal with everything and move on. And I think, gosh, that's such it's almost a dangerous mindset to have, because you're setting everybody up below you to really fail, because when they do start facing struggles and things that they are having trouble with, they think that, okay, well, so and so above me, I guess they never had this issue, so maybe I'm just by myself, maybe I'm not as strong as my captain or whatever, because I just never saw that. And instead of just truly being a strong person, a strong individual in every way possible, but also having that vulnerability to be a human and be real, that's an amazing gift that we can give the people that we are leading, I think.
Yeah, I think people just want to be seen. I know within the past year, I had one of my firefighters show up and you could tell even before shift change that his mind just wasn't right. And we had a kind of a quiet time while everybody else was checking off the apparatus and everything. And I said, what's going on, man? You're off. What's going on? And it evolved into a 10, 15-minute conversation. Finally, till it came to the point was he looked at me, he's like, hey, Cap, I'm not comfortable having this conversation with you right now. I said, that right there shows that we need to be having this conversation. I don't know what you're going through, but just know that I'm here. And sometimes that's all that you don't need to say or do anything. Sometimes you just need to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this cadre, this group of instructors is everyone's there. Everyone's, like you said, we're still going through our stuff. It's not like we have hunky-dory life that we're not dealing with problems and situations. We're all dealing with our things. And we know that we've got somebody that all we have to do is pick up the phone. I mean, shoot, just last week, Tuna brought his family all the way up to Georgia to see me because he knew I had a rough spell there. I didn't think I needed it. And quite frankly, I felt uncomfortable because I felt he was sacrificing on my behalf, and we're not very good receivers.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
But it meant the world to me to be able to spend time with his wife and his kids and get to know him and just go experience life together. And it means the world to me. It's fuel to my fire. It's awesome.
Yeah. That's truly a blessing for sure. And something, now that I've experienced that with you all, I start looking at my relationship or just the connection that I have within my crew. And before I had that with you all, I would say that the connection of my crew was great. It was awesome. And it is. I feel like we have a really good connection. We've got really good relationships, but man, it is such a huge step from where you just are good and have a good connection and relationship to that next level or the however many levels up of being truly having that tribe mentality and everything that we have been talking about here. And so it's really shown me that I've got a lot of work to do at that at that spot in my life, and even at home, with my family. There is good relationships, there's a lot of love and connection, but man, there's a lot of steps that we need to be taking to get higher up in that realm for sure.
Well, and that's what it's all about. And that's I was listening to Eric and Olivia's podcast the other day, the one they did after you, with a friend of theirs. And Olivia said, yoga is awareness. That's all it teaches you is awareness, knowing what's going on around you. So even if those relationships aren't there, that being that you are aware and present of where you're at and what's going on in that
Yeah.
pays huge dividends because it's on your radar now. You understand that, you see that. You don't know what you don't know. And unless you're aware of what's happening, you can't work on it.
Yeah. So, it's been brought up several times, and definitely somewhere that I wanted to get into with you, because you are very, very vocal about the power that not only yoga just in general, but the yoga for first responders program, the impact it's had on your life and the change that it has helped you to receive in your life. And so just let you have some time to talk about that, what that has meant to you, what that change has looked like, what it has done for you in that time.
All right. So I'll kind of start where Eric and I can kind of connected at MAFC that year. We'd probably had maybe 30 minutes of interaction the whole time. You know how busy the class is. Everybody's got things to do or whatever. And Eric right away, we kind of connected and he saw my value. Once again, that's all people want, is they want to be seen. So for him to reach out, he's like, hey, I really appreciate your style of instructor, how you are, how you carry yourself. He said, we're teaching this class in St. Louis. Unfortunately, due to my full-time job, I'm not going to be able to be there to teach the firefighter cultural portion of it. He said, would you be interested if we bring you out here? You can take the program, but also help out by teaching the cultural awareness. I need another firefighter there to help me. And in future programs, I was like, dude, sign me up. I'll do it. And immediately I was like, holy crap, what did I just agree to do? I've tried yoga 3 times. Twice was on P90X with an hour and 20-minute yoga video.
Oh yeah.
Never finished. And then our CrossFit, the CrossFit manager, she was a yoga instructor, and I tried to take one of her classes and I couldn't make it through 15 minutes because my heart rate was going up. I felt the walls closing in, breathing because I'm getting towels over my face and all this music. I was like, I don't know what's going on. My hypervigilance, I was like, I am not a yoga person at all. It's not the flexibility side. It's just, I can't turn my mind off. Well, anyways, Eric was able to be there, so I didn't have to instruct. So he still honored that agreement and they brought me out and I was able to attend as a student. One of the most challenging classes that I have ever taken in my fire service career. Just the legwork. It was a hybrid class. I had to do the format that Eric and Olivia have created with their platform and their videos and the work you have to do. And it's better than any college class I've ever taken, just their format and the way they present it. Just before the class and the work that you have to do to get there. Got there and immediately the way their class is structured translates exactly into the way that the fire service, police academies, all that kind of stuff work. You class 026, you've got a squad, you've got to be there on time, you've got to do these things. And you know, Eric and Olivia, they don't take any guff. They're not your quiet spoken gym teacher from Beavis and Butthead type of.
Yeah.
They command respect. And
Yeah.
and to be there as a student and connect with some of their cadre and everything, after the first day I was hooked. I had multiple times where I was shaking, I was crying, my emotions were going on, and it's that same vulnerability piece that we get out of developing high performance class. Is that everybody's got something to deal with, something to cope. There were firefighters in there, there were police officers, there were nurses, there were doctors, there were EMTs, there were paramedics. It was a huge cross section of people. And within a day or two, you're automatically connecting with your squad. And we're talking 10, 12-hour days in class. So it's not just showing up and doing the firefighter thing. All right, we're going to learn this. All right, this is a test answer type of question, like the foot stomp stuff. It was, you actually had to do the work. And me, I carry a lot of my stresses in my joints and I didn't realize. So I was holding a horse position, which is kind of a deep squat type position. And meanwhile, holding it, I had this emotional breakdown like I haven't had in a very long time, just a blubbering mess. And that's just manifest how so much trauma that our body carries. So yoga isn't about poses. Yoga is about awareness. Yoga is about breathing. If you can breathe and be aware, you are doing yoga. So I took that class and I, like I said, I was hooked immediately. I connected a lot with some of the students in there and also some of the instructors in the cadre. And came home and I was like, hey, I got to teach some practice yoga sessions to get my instructor 2 certificate. So you've got to write like this 3-4 page essay. You've got to do some practice teach time and log it and that kind of stuff. So of course, my crew were the easy victims. It's like, hey, I took this class, I got to teach. Well, after the first time teaching it, every shift after that, they were like, Cap, can we do yoga today? Can we do yoga today? They would just keep asking. And at the end of the session where you do your neural resets and that kind of stuff, some of my most stressed out guys were snoring laying on the floor from doing a neural reset. If that's not a testament right there to how it can regulate your body and bring you into coherency and the mind, body, and soul working together, I don't know what is. So I mentioned earlier that I'm the guy that shows up an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours early, a lot of times to work out. But sometimes now I know that I'm not in the right mindset, that I'll show up and I'll do a neural reset session or a breathing session, or sometimes I'll do a 45-minute recovery type session. So it just depends on where my mind is, or I'll read a book, or it's, so I don't feel like I have to work out before every shift. It could just be being aware where my mindset is and what I need right now. I'm able to do that. And through their platform and their foundations and their app, all you have to do is pull up a video and then they coach you through it. And it's just listening and going through the motions and doing what you need to do.
Yeah. You talked about earlier, you know, you were somebody that just, you didn't have feelings. You didn't allow yourself to feel anything. Would you say that this program is what made you help you cross that bridge as well, or was that something else?
Without a doubt. So I was pretty low for a while there, and I haven't really put this out there, but I was kind of having some suicidal ideations and going through stuff. I've never sat and talked with a therapist in a formal setting. I've got a lot of therapists and mental health counselor friends and peer support. So I do have an outlet, and I'm sure there's still things that I need to work through in my head. But it provided me that reset, that neural reset, just like we teach in the class about breathing patterns and all that other kind of stuff. That's really when my heart rate gets up and when I get stressed. That's kind of what centers me, is the breathing. And I think just having the tool in the toolbox there available if I need it is what gives me a lot of peace of mind, because I know that if I'm struggling or having a hard time, it's not going to take a pill. It's not going to do this. I can do a yoga session, and that is the medicine that I need to overcome what I'm working through. The only way to is through. So if we keep putting things aside, we're not dealing with them. And that's kind of what I like about the yoga sessions. I always thought it was, all right, if you're going to be mindful, you have to clear your mind. You have to not be thinking of anything. It's impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't do it. So that's what happened when I did my previous yoga interactions. Was my mind was spinning like a merry-go-round and things are just flying off, like the stop switch isn't working. And I thought that I had to do that. Well, the methodology behind what YFFR teaches is that you acknowledge the thought is there, you kind of take it and put it aside to deal with later, and then you go on to the next thing. So it's not that you are just totally disregarding it. It's all right. That's okay. You're having this issue. We'll work on it later. We're doing something else right now. And to have that mind control, just like a body control, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's the magic.
Yeah. And that's kind of one of their key statements is, that mastery of the mind. And I think obviously I've had a pretty good conversation with both Olivia and Eric on here in a couple episodes, and described a lot of that stuff. But still, talking to a firefighter who obviously has ties with yoga now, and it has played a huge role in his life now. But that wasn't you. You just explained before that you were totally turned off by yoga because of a couple, situations. And I think so many people out there, especially first responders, that's kind of where they're at, because, and they talk about it all the time. It's that misconception, it's the 110-pound white girl doing all these crazy stretches, that you see. That's kind of what yoga is portrayed in America. But it's so much more. It's so far from that it's just crazy to really start to understand what yoga is. And so do you have, is it easy to, now you're an instructor with them and doing it, with your crew, like you said, is that part of it? Do you find it easy to kind of get people to start to understand, or is that a struggle to really kind of get that across to people?
Well, your perception is your reality. And we've talked about that a couple times on this call, that if we go into something with an expectation, to me, expectations are resentment under construction. If we're expecting a certain thing and we don't get what we expected out of it, we automatically turn it off. We're like, oh, that's not for me. But if we go into things with an open mind, and once again, it's that vulnerability piece for the off-going crew to walk out in the bay and see me doing yoga before shift. Yeah, there might be a little busting of chops and that kind of stuff, but I don't care because it works for me. I had an experience the other day with my firefighter. He's at the tail end of paramedic school. And he was feeling a little stressed. He's got national registry coming out and practicals and that kind of stuff. I was like, hey man, you want to do a yoga session with me? He's like, yeah, I'd love to. Let's try it. So we did the yoga session, and then we did the Iron Heart neural reset afterwards. That's like my favorite and my go-to, just personally. It works for me. And I went back to my truck out back to get something behind the station. In the meantime, a citizen walked in, was having an active heart attack, having an active MI. And this firefighter was in there by himself. And he was able to go from yoga, that relaxed state, into putting into practice everything he just learned and able to manage it and do a phenomenal job with it. He's like, and he texted me after the day after, he's like, that was awesome. And for him to, after one session, to recognize how beneficial, number one, that it was to him. And number two, for him to ask, hey, is there a video or a recording of the Iron Heart? Because that really helped me. And I want to have that available for when I need it.
Yeah.
The first step is the hardest. Don't knock something till you try it. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. No, I think those are absolutely some of the most powerful times in our lives, are when we put the effort into whatever it is that we feel like our purpose is, and then we see the benefit of it, see the impact that it makes on somebody, see the change it makes on somebody. It's a very powerful moment, and it's a very fulfilling moment. I mean, those are the things that kind of help you push forward and know that you're not only doing exactly what you need to be doing, but you want to do more of it. So I think that's an awesome story that we all want to get to for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It's just, and it can cause stresses at sometimes when you taste a fruit and it's a sweet fruit, you want to share it with somebody else. And when they don't, number one, take it, and number two, appreciate it. Sometimes we take it personally, but everybody's time will come, and we just have to be there once again, be present and be ready when they're ready.
Yeah. The whole planting the seeds kind of metaphor, we can't control what happens to that seed. That's on somebody else's timeline. That's on, there's a lot of other factors, but we've got to be responsible for at least planting those seeds, because that's the important part. We are putting it out there, and hopefully over time, in its own time, those seeds will mature into something special. Or that's pretty much the personification of that metaphor right there.
It's a great metaphor, because you plant a seed in darkness. You don't plant it in the light. You plant a seed in darkness, and then when it cracks, it gets those little nutrients, that little bit of water, but it's got to crack first. And it gets those waters and nutrients till it pokes out and it sees the sun, and that's when the growth really starts happening. But it's not good growth unless the roots are going down beneath it as well. So very powerful metaphor.
Yeah. Well, man, I've truly enjoyed this conversation. I hope that you've enjoyed as well. I know that you had some thoughts as to where this is going to lead. I think that you've got a story that needs to be shared for sure, and there's lots of people out there that need to hear it. Is there anything else that you'd like to kind of get into or share before we kind of wrap up?
No, just the other thing is just always being actively engaged. We talk about being mindful and aware and everything. A lot of that comes with me through keeping the mind active, reading books and podcasts, and there's some phenomenal episodes out there on a lot of different tasks. But once again, diversify that. It doesn't necessarily have to be a firefighter or first responder podcast. I've learned just as much, if not more, from stuff like the Huberman Lab podcast, one of my favorites. Yours, James Gearing does a phenomenal job with Behind the Shield podcast, and in the cross section of people and subject matter experts that he's had on there. His most recent one that he just put up is absolutely phenomenal, talking about regulating the mind and tools that we have out there. So just don't be present, be aware, but also try to go in those uncomfortable places. Listen to a podcast you wouldn't usually listen to, or read a book that's not a firefighter book.
Yeah.
There's a lot more out there than the fire service.
Yeah. That's something that it's almost like my interest, just, or not really even interest. It's where I'm at and what I need changes pretty often. And I'll go through stretches where I do kind of want to be in that fire service type mentality. So, absorbing fire service podcasts and things like that. But a lot of times, man, I'll just be in a place where it's like, well, I want to hear more of a like a Les Brown or a TD Jakes sermon today,
Yeah.
and be fed in that way. Or I just feel like I need just some good solid leadership, some Maxwell or some Lencioni or things like that. It's just it's almost like kind of like you talked about your mornings of just being aware of what you need, and that's what you need to do. That's kind of where I feel like it's almost it's hard to pin down for me sometimes. It's like, okay, I'm sitting here listening to this, but I'm just not into it. I have been into this a lot lately, but it's just not hitting today. So what is it that I need today? And to not only be aware of that, but to make that change and to start kind of figuring out where you need to be fed. And that's this been kind of interesting for me to start to see that and see how it kind of flows differently day by day, week by week. So lots of material out there for sure.
Yeah, and more than anything, be the light to somebody out there. Smile at somebody in the grocery store, pay for somebody's grocery. Just do it organically. If it feels right, do it. That's it's amazing how you can affect somebody's life. That might be the only smile they see. Or I'm a hugger. I love to hug. It's just it's one of those things that we need that connectivity as human beings. So that being said, one of the most powerful things that was shared with me was let whatever you do today be enough. Just because you don't check every box that you had on your to-do list doesn't mean that you didn't accomplish something. So let what you do today be enough.
It's perfect. Absolutely. I couldn't have a better way to end it right there, is just with that thought. And so with you kind of ending it right there, how about is there a way that if people have some questions or they want to reach out to you, is there a way that you would like to share for them to get a hold of you, email or anything?
Yeah, my email is always out there. I'll even put my phone number out there. My mobile number is 678-614-9254. Call, text if you need somebody to talk to. Somebody on the outside, I'm always here. My social media accounts are my first initial, last name, Maikoski. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, that kind of stuff. However, I do occasionally take a sabbatical from the social media madness. So I do disappear every once in a while. So
All right, man. Again, appreciate so much your time. I'm so thankful to not only have people like you in my life, but have people like you that are willing to share, the value that you have, even though it might seem hidden or it might seem like it is nothing special, but there is so much there you have to give. And just I consider myself blessed to be a friend of yours and a brother of yours. And I love you, man. I appreciate your time and look forward to connecting more in the future.
love you too, brother. Anything, anytime, anywhere.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Captain Marc Maikoski, and so happy to have him on with us today. So proud to be a part of the tribe that we are a part of, and just want to say that if you don't have that, you can always find it. If you can't find it, then you can always make your tribe, find some people that you can go to, can trust, and truly be able to depend on, and hopefully you can be that for them as well. So thank you for your time. That's all I got today. Until next time, stay humble and do work.